Welcome back to Are You Being Real? We have an absolutely fascinating guest here today. We've got Matty Mo, aka the most famous artist, in the house here at Are You Being Real Studios. Matty, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Mark. Yeah, it's funny because I've seen you a bunch of times around town and you've never really acknowledged me.
Which is so embarrassing. I actually feel shame around that. And not only because you're an awesome person, but you're also the most famous artist right next to me, and I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, it's like I always see you in that cowboy hat, which I think it's that one right over there.
That's pretty new as well.
Okay.
So I've been seeing you recently.
Like walking down Abbot Kinney at Petite Meritage. I think, have you been to Burning Man?
Yeah, many times.
Okay, so I've seen you at Burning Man. And like I've made eye contact with you, and then like it was my own like fear of being like rejected or whatever. I was like, that guy looks cool, but then I never like said anything, and then you never said anything to me. So it took an introduction by Deepak over at the State of the Art podcast for us to finally connect. And I was like, I wanted to meet that guy, so now I get to meet you.
Amazing. That I had no idea, and when Deepak told me I had to check out your work, I was like, holy moly! I'm like, you are going to be the perfect guest for this show because you are really just poking, not even poking, like you're like, I don't even know like the correct word.
Massaging.
Massaging.
Massaging humanity or whatever.
It's so great because, you know, we live in this crazy, wild, noisy, busy world, and it kind of just is what it is. And I love how you're challenging the status quo as well as kind of just milking the system.
Totally.
So let's dive right into it. What I like to do, at least recently, is start these episodes with the guest sharing a story of where maybe their authenticity was tested or some kind of pivotal crossroads of their life, that life-changing moment. I wanted to invite you to take us to that point.
Cool. So let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Do you like ethnic food?
Yeah, sure.
What kind of food do you like?
I like Thai food and
so
Japanese food.
You like Thai food or you like Americans' version of Thai food?
I don't even know.
Well, is the Thai food... When's the last time you ate Thai food?
Last week.
Who cooked it for you?
Well, I didn't see the actual chef, so I couldn't tell you.
Was it... But it was a restaurant in Venice?
Yeah.
Okay. So my suspicion is that was not authentic Thai food, like cooked by a grandmother who came over from Thailand and used the real ingredients, the ones that are only accessible in Thailand. And so you're parading around saying like, I like Thai food, but you like Americans' version of Thai food. And so even the food we're talking about isn't authentic. And so this idea of authenticity is a really challenging thing for me to grapple with, because ever since the internet came into being, we're all kind of sharing culture and sharing ideas where we are one big melting pot, and there is no such thing as authentic anymore. So I guess my big breakaway moment is like, not that I found my authenticity, I found that there is no authenticity, and we're all one big melting pot. And that to me is fascinating. That to me actually gets me excited about who I get to become. Because in knowing that there is no such thing as authenticity except for what I want to be, I get to become authentic in the process.
Gotcha. So there is a version of yourself that you want to be.
Well, there's inevitably a version you become, and that's your authentic self. But to say this is me in my authentic self is inauthentic to begin with. Because
I really can't argue with that.
Because we're like appropriating culture all over the place. Like my work, my artwork, and like a lot of the way I think about the world is just like, remember when you're in kindergarten, you're like copying cursive letters?
Yeah.
Like, did you develop your cursive style, or did a book that taught you to copy cursive letters develop your cursive style? And so you say like, this is my handwriting,
right,
and it's like, it's unique to me,
right,
but it was influenced by a system that was already in place.
Sure. Or my brother's handwriting or my mom's handwriting that I saw all the time.
Yeah. And so I guess like this big pivotal moment where I discovered who I was just like opening up my eyes to like the reality of the situation we're in at this moment, which is totally and fundamentally different than any situation before us. And it will be completely different than any situation in the future.
Okay. So was there a specific like time in your life when you left it all behind? You haven't always been an artist. In fact, I watched a documentary online where you said, I'm the most famous artist. I don't even know how to paint.
Yeah.
So at what point do you feel that you shifted into a place where you even decided to pursue art?
I think as soon as I said I was the most famous artist, I became the most famous artist. And so it's more, it was, it was just deciding that's who I wanted to be. And I didn't need to be it in order to be it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It was like a direction to head.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, I guess the big moment was like when I stood up at, or let me take a step back. I was at a writing workshop at Esalen, which is an institute in Big Sur on the cliffs, self-contained. They've got farms. It's pretty idyllic, actually. Have you been to Esalen?
I have not yet.
So the beauty of Esalen is that it's a confluence of three waters. So spring water meets hot springs water meets the ocean water. And so this confluence was like very sacred to Native Americans who lived on the land, and it was a place of worship and celebration. And I'm appropriating the history there, so that's not necessarily the authentic story. Look it up for yourself. But this place is like full of magic. And so I was there in like the spring of 2014, about a year after I stopped being a tech entrepreneur.
Right, okay.
And I was around like 20 people who were all like very credible. Like the founder of Burning Man was there, and the guy who like invented the internet supposedly was there.
Al Gore, Larry Harvey hanging out with Al Gore.
Al Gore was not there. There's like a lot of like legit people, and we were supposed to stand up and introduce ourselves. And so Zach asked, "Does anyone want to volunteer to go first?" And so I raised my hand and I stood up right away and I said, "I'm Matty Mo and I'm the most famous artist. And I don't know what that means, but I know that I can build a platform, and I know that art is a powerful means through which messages are communicated. So I'm going to rely on you all to help me figure out what my message is." And then I sat back down. And had I not started out that entire weekend with that intention,
yeah,
I wouldn't have been treated the way I was, which was, first, this guy's a little weird that he calls himself the most famous artist. And then that people were put off a little bit in the beginning, but then they started to realize like, I'm just as lost as everyone else, and I'm just trying to be what I want to be. And so in setting that intention in the very beginning, people started to engage with me as the most famous artist. Like I'd walk into the dining hall and people would be like, "Oh, it's the most famous artist." And I started to believe it. And so I don't know that there was this big moment, but like one observation is that if you just decide to become something and you tell everyone that you want to be it, you got a better chance of becoming it. And what's interesting about social media is like there's this like reinforcement construct happening on social media where if you post like, "I'm going 30 days without alcohol," like Jan 1, 2018, "I'm going a month without booze," people will like help you reinforce that. Mm-hmm. And so most of life is about getting that kind of positive reinforcement.
Wow. That's super duper bold and courageous of you to do that. And just out of curiosity, had you thought of that before?
So this takes us back to fall of 2013. I'm on the Autobahn. I had just spent like a little under a month in Berlin. I was speaking at a tech conference, and I guess my talk was so interesting that this dude called Robin Heck, he invited me out to his birthday in Hamburg. And so we got on the Autobahn from Berlin, and he paired me up with one of his buddies after a night of like clubbing at the crazy Berlin clubs. And I'm like passed out in the back passenger seat, and we're heading down the Autobahn. It's like 7 a.m. And the guy who's driving goes, "Who's never been on the Autobahn?" And I was like, "I've never been on the Autobahn." He goes, "We're going to go fast." so he punches it, and we're going like $1.20, $1.30. And 5 minutes in, I'm like, this is fun. Like my heart's beating, and I'm like, this is so cool. We're whizzing by cars. And then I realized like, this guy's not going to stop. And so I said, "All right, dude, that's cool." He goes, No, we have 4 more hours. And so we're driving this car at like blazing speeds down the Autobahn, and I'm starting to get like really uncomfortable. And I'm like afraid to speak up. I'm afraid to say anything like, and so what ended up happening was our rear tire popped. And I'm sitting on top of the rear tire that popped. So I was the first to notice it. And so I tapped the driver on the shoulder. I go, "Our tire popped." And then in like techno, German deep house music is like, he's like, no, we're good. And so like, I'm looking down and I see sparks flying. He looks in the rearview mirror, goes, I think he said, "Oh fuck," and then he slams on the brakes, and then we start spinning. And so, at this point in time, I'm like mid-20s, had a successful tech career, was trying to write a book about my life that wasn't really going anywhere because my life wasn't that interesting. And I'm facing death, like literally facing death, spinning backwards on the Autobahn, looking at cars coming at me, going, I'm going to die on the Autobahn in Germany on the way to a party in Hamburg to race Ferraris with some dude I don't even know. The second spin happens, and it's like, I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything with my life. Like the tech I created, like the ad tech stuff I was doing, which all the listeners can go Google Matty Mo and find, like that actually didn't make the world a better place. It wasn't that interesting. It wasn't something that I could brag about to my mom. She didn't even get it. So after the second spin, we hit the wall, we flip over twice, full on like dramatic movie. Luckily, everyone was fine. Like we took people to the hospital, and there was like minor head bumps and stuff like that, but no one got like injured, luckily. And I like kick open this door. I'm like trying to kick open this door like I saw in the movies. I can't kick open the door, so I grab the latch and I like run away from the car and realize like everyone's still in the car and my suitcase is still rolling, and my computer smashed into a gazillion pieces, and I didn't have a backup of my book anywhere. And because of the way my hard drive was set up, it like disappeared. So my book, the thing I'd been working on, my opus that I just talked about, gone. And at this time I was like obsessed with social media. It was like middle of 2013.
Because that's what your tech company was as well.
Yeah, my tech company was ad tech, but I was like into Instagram. I was like, I loved like sharing images of me like eating fancy sushi meals and flying on private jets and like getting all those likes and showing everyone how like my lifestyle porn, like that was so much a part of my 20s. I'm running out of this car, right? Yeah, please, and I find my cell phone, which like I can't drop from a foot off the ground without it shattering, but it had just survived an Autobahn accident and flown out a window, and it was unscathed. Yeah. I found my wallet, my passport. Yeah. And I immediately thought, I got to get out of Germany. Like, this is too much. But before I did that, I took a picture of the crashed car and posted it on Instagram, and I posted it on Facebook, and I was like, wild trip, like on my way to race Ferraris, like what a way to end the trip, like something crazy like that, like just to like pander to the masses. And you know, right after you post things, you scroll a couple times to see what else is up. And I saw something, and this occurred to me right after I had gone, oh no, my life doesn't mean anything, and I'm gonna die, to scrolling through Instagram and finding some reference to an artist who celebrated after their death. I think it was like Warhol or something like that. It's coincidentally like I almost died on the birthday of like the death day of some famous artist. Yeah. And I thought to myself, well, I thought about my legacy in that moment before my death, and art and the art institution is a way to create a legacy after death. So I went from author, which I wasn't very good at, to artist. And it wasn't until after the winter and I like kept on pretending to be an artist that I arrived at this concept of the most famous artist. And I think it was like me just putting on my marketing ad tech hat and going, okay, so who is the most famous artist? Like in between the car crash and that Esalen story is like, who is the most famous artist? How do you become an artist? Like starting to like search and like look for what the solution was. And in doing so, I realized that no one had ever been called the most famous artist other than as an adjective. No one had said like, no, I'm empirically the most famous artist. Like I'm the guy that more people know about than anyone else. And I use the tools of my time and the stories of my time to do that. And so that was in the back of my head when I announced it at Esalen, but I had never really said it out loud. And then it wasn't until a month or two later that I looked for the domain, the most famous artist. It was available, bought it, got the Instagram, and then the rest is history.
Yep. And when you Google it, you pop up right at the top.
Yeah, I am the most artist. You are. Yeah, like forever now. I think that's something else that we all, like as actors within this drama unfolding on the internet, must realize is that our actions online are going to be there forever. Like these podcasts are going to be better preserved in a data center somewhere and mined with machine learning with future generations trying to look back and figure out what was going on than any of the archaeological assets that museums are out looking for right now. And we're all leaving these breadcrumbs.
That's a really interesting thought, right? So I guess that actually makes sense, or we'd want to like put our highlight reels up there.
Yeah, and or just like decide what you want to be and then tell everyone you're it and then go be it.
Yeah.
And so like forever from now until the end of days when there's no longer power for the computer servers, like I'm the most famous artist. If you Google who is the most famous artist, that's me. You know?
I love it because I, see people all the time on social media saying, they're the, number one best-selling author of, and I'm like, says who? And it's like, oh, says that person.
Yeah.
Right? And that actually like could skew someone who like maybe wasn't going to pay attention to that person to all of a sudden to be like, oh, I'm going to read that book. It's like a number one bestseller. So it does work. And I just love how you've really taken it to such a bold extreme, saying that you're the most famous artist.
And I guess like the takeaway from this transitional moment where I like left it all behind and became the most famous artist is realizing that like if you be who you want to be, you will find people who will support you in being who you want to be. Even if you have no idea how to do it in the beginning. It's
a really bold step because it comes with a tremendous amount of risk, right? Like you didn't know how you were going to be received at Esalen that day. Like you don't know how your family is going to respond to you. My question for you is image, right? Because it's like to call yourself the most famous artist is a really bold thing because that is such an image, right? That you are essentially claiming, projecting, whatever, however you want to say it. And at the same time, there's going to be so many people who reject something like that, especially anyone who's a fan of art, anyone who has even the slightest interest of collecting evidence that they don't like you. So that obviously was a big breakthrough for you, right? I would imagine. I know you had
I had an identity, right? I was like, I alluded to this earlier, like my tech days, right? Yeah. I was at school at Stanford. I got in there on a wrestling scholarship because I had good enough SATs and I had the right after school programming and like all that shit. Yeah. And my identity at Stanford and after Stanford was around being a tech entrepreneur because that's like the institution I was indoctrinated into. And I had some success with that. But then one day I was no longer a tech entrepreneur because something in and out of my control happened, which you can Google drunk naked founder. You'll figure it out. But like basically I got filmed stumbling around drunk and naked on a beach and my friend posted it.
Why?
I don't know. I think he thought it was funny, but it wasn't funny. And it ruined the company I was running. Yeah. And I went from living on Abbot Kinney in this massive house to basically like starting over. Like everything I had worked for 26, 27 years was taken away. Yeah. And so like I get it if you lose it all because you're like addicted to heroin and you fucking let it go.
Right.
But like I lost it all because I was drunk and naked having fun on a beach. Yeah. And it all got taken away. Like my entire identity. And so
talk about the definition of humiliation. That is it. Like I know like I have dreams like I'll wake up and be like, oh wow, I was like naked at school, like I forgot to put my clothes on. Like that was a reality for you, and not only was it at school, but it was across the whole internet and you lost your company because of it.
Yeah. And so I guess after that happened, I didn't need to really care about my identity or cherish my identity because I knew it could be taken away at any moment. So if I'm going to pick an identity, I'm going to go for it.
Wow. So you actually gained freedom with that humiliation.
Yeah. And I guess like that's an anecdote that I think a lot of people can relate to, which is like, if you feel trapped right now because of who you are, realize it could go away tomorrow. And if it did, then who would you become? Because if you wait around with an identity that you don't necessarily like and it eventually disappears, how mad at yourself are you going to be that you wasted all that time in the first place? Because all we have is this time.
That brings up for me something that I saw in one of your documentaries as well, where people are like, "Oh, that's not art," or "I could do that," and you're like, "Oh, well, if you could do that, why aren't you doing it?"
Yeah. Well, I think I more eloquently said, "Go fucking do it," then.
Yeah, probably.
There is something to be said about just doing stuff.
Yeah.
I guess like if someone else wanted to become the most famous artist, I would welcome it. If they wanted to work harder than me and they wanted to do crazy outlandish shit, that would just make the world a more interesting place. And I'd be okay with that. Like I don't actually want to be the most famous artist. I think what I've been trying to articulate is that I'm expressing the most famous artist as this abstract concept for living in today's digital era. Because art's supposed to make you feel something, provide cultural context for the times we're living in, using the tools of our time. It's supposed to fit in with the zeitgeist of culture. The zeitgeist of culture right now is like us all trying to discover who we are and what this authenticity means. And more than anything, authenticity is just doing what you want to do and then becoming who you are.
So beautifully said. What I'm hearing you kind of call us up to the challenge of is all being our own, most famous artist, whatever that looks like to each of us.
Totally. And it doesn't have to manifest itself in the form of you like coming up with a title and saying it. It can just be action also. It can just be like, I want to be kinder, so I'm going to look everyone in the eyes and give people hugs more. Maybe action is a bad word for it. Maybe it's or an inaccurate word for it. Maybe it's like intention. But that word gets used by all like the yogis and stuff. Like is intention even like a cool word anymore?
Yeah, I think it's still a focus word that people use.
I had someone say like to me, I had this friend of mine when I was getting started with the most famous artists. She claimed to be friends with Banksy and like Jay-Z and all these people, and she's just like whatever. Anyway, she said to me, she said, "What's your intention?" And she was like forcing me to define my intention. And I was like, you know what, man? I just want to print money and get my dick sucked. And she was like not happy with that. And I was like, but that's what I want to do. At the time, that's what I wanted to do. And like, I think I got like a drink in my face and all this stuff. And I think that's the problem is like when someone tells you to declare your intention, it's like, maybe I don't know what my intention is just yet. Maybe I need to like take some time and space to think about that. But thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, even asking the question is good because then oftentimes we have the invitation to reflect and get clear on what we do actually want in this loud, noisy, distracted world.
Yeah.
What's your approach? So you've got this big goal to statistically, undeniably be the most famous artist. What is your approach to getting there?
So it's like that's kind of the thing. It's like let's figure out like distribution. Distribution is a thing. Like distribution is core to business. Distribution comes in all shapes and forms. It could be just a strategically placed painting with my signature on the wall next to something. Like you're putting a lot of energy into this podcast to get people here and to like interview them, and like I showed up and we had a little bit of a chat beforehand and we got to know each other. Like being able to inject myself into your universe where you actually have to tell my story for me will help me become the most famous artist.
It's very, very smart. It's very challenging to do as well. I mean, I look at social media and like most people want to have, more followers or more friends or greater influence because, with that we feel a greater sense of importance. We might have a easier time accomplishing what we want to accomplish, living in this kind of celebrity obsessed culture. So you really see through a lot of the bullshit, and like you really see, like from my perspective, you see the levers that are being pulled in order to create celebrity. Like you really take advantage of that. You create a brilliant art piece about Kanye. Or Kanye loves Kanye.
Yeah, it was just the world's largest collection of Kanye West portraits.
Yeah,
like an ego obsessed guy being celebrated by all these artists who in painting an individual portrait of Kanye would get no attention, but when you bring it all together, it becomes something, and the press was willing to write a story about it. So that speaks to one tactic is like, I come up with headlines. Like the majority of our information is consumed via headline in some kind of feed that scrolls top to bottom. And so knowing which image and headline you're going to inject into that feed and which trusted source is going to provide that distribution is one of the tactics to figuring out how to become the most famous artist. Is like, come up with an art project. What's the headline? Who's going to publish this? Pitch them. If they bite on the idea that they're going to publish it, then I do it, and then I know it's going to work.
You also did a really incredible and bold project that was kind of happened right in line with Snapchat's IPO.
Totally.
Will you tell us about that? And everyone's got to check out check it out online. But if you go to
themostfamousartist.com, if you go to themostfamousartist.com, you'll see my bibliography, which is all the links to everything. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you about the Snapchat thing. Around my birthday, July of 2016, I got the bright idea. A lot of my work is influenced by like just what I see online and what I see around me. And I saw like this massive leak of like celebrity nudes because iCloud got hacked or something like that. And it got me thinking about like nudes and people's willingness to share them. And like, if you send a nude to your girlfriend or boyfriend, is that safe? Because like, even if you trust them, their phone might get hacked, or their friend might see it and send it to themselves and it disappears into the ether, or it's like on a server somewhere and the servers get hacked by nefarious hacker dudes and then it's out there. So I got thinking like, okay, why are people sending these nudes? And it's like about being connected. It's about acceptance at the end of the day. It's about like, you want someone to accept you and like you, so you send them this like image of you in your rawest state, and you hope that they accept you for it. And so I dug a little bit deeper. I was like, why do people want to be accepted? And they want to be accepted because they want to be part of something. They want to be connected. And so as the most famous artist, I'm connected to a lot of people. So I asked my followers, I said, okay, so it's my birthday. Send me a nude and I'll make you famous. The idea being that like they're going to get what they want, which is connected and accepted and famous, if they send me a nude. There were 3 rules, though. You had to be over 18. You couldn't show any identifiable features. And the message had to say, happy birthday, the most famous artist, to more or less make sure that you were giving me permission to use your image. Yeah. So there was a couple, like I had to think deeply about like how to structure this thing so I didn't go to like get in trouble. And so I got sent like lots of nudes, like lots of them. And I was like egging people on where I'd repost the ones that were coming in and ask for more and like, you know, just do the general like snowball effect thing.
What did that feel like in the moment?
It was disgusting. Like so many shapes and sizes and body parts. And then there were like the people who took it like a little bit too far, where it was like every day for a year, I would get like a picture of this dude's butthole.
Wow.
Like every day. And I didn't block him because I was just like, how long is this guy going to keep sending me a picture of his butthole? Like, and he would like dress it up and like all sorts of like
mustaches.
Dude, it's so crazy. Anyway, so got all these nudes and I didn't know what I was going to do with them. And then months go by, hear about Snapchat's IPO. It happens to coincide with a big art week in New York. Find a pop-up space, print out these nudes, host an exhibition of the nudes near Wall Street in Tribeca. I get the press to cover it. So I pitched a news outlet. They made a video about it. That snowballed more coverage of it. And the city of New York ended up having to shut it down for indecent exposure, which I found was quite ironic given that the city of New York and the greater world economy was celebrating the platform through which all of that indecent exposure occurred.
Right. So brilliant. I just love the creativity. And I just think like how much fun that and weird and crazy that must have been.
It was definitely interesting. It was like, so that was just like another day in the life of the most famous artist, which is making art to become more famous. It's an exciting thing to do.
Yeah.
Like every day is pretty exciting.
Yeah. Got to ask you this question because I also saw this in a documentary where you said, and you alluded to this earlier in this interview, that we're all learning from each other. You know, we're all like copying each other all the time. And you've been outspoken about the fact that you'll copy artist styles, whether it's famous artists or up and coming artists. And in some cases, your copy or kind of take on somebody else's art might actually become more famous, and you might be able to sell it for 10 times more money or 100 times much more money than the artist who
Well, I
perhaps you
prefer to
discovered
sell
it
it for
from.
less and undercut those
You
artists
do?
and
No
provide
way.
access to the market. Yeah.
There you go. Nice.
Well, I'm a businessman. Like
Yeah.
I can't become the most famous artist if I don't have access to resources to do my projects.
Yeah.
And so like another reason I got into art is like I was running an ad tech business, advertising technology business. I guess like what I learned from that is that a headline and image and targeting combinations can sell a good, especially if you get someone into a marketing funnel. And then I also thought about like, okay, so if I'm going to be done with this ad tech thing, and this was before the Drunk Naked Founder thing, I was thinking about like what product could I sell online that was super powerful. And it turns out that you want a high margin good. And I'm synthesizing my learnings right now from what I learned in the advertising world.
Yeah.
You want a high margin good. You want it to be visual. You want it to be something that when it's in a home or being used, markets itself. And then I got to thinking about what qualifies as those things, and it's art. And so when I got to selling art, I started out with like a blank canvas. And I had to think about, okay, well, what is going to sell? Well, what's already selling? And I went and found it. And I thought, okay, so this is selling and that's selling and this is selling. And I can actually do that, even though I don't know how to paint. So I'm going to do that. And so I went and did that. And then I posted it. And because it was an aesthetic that was working at the time, I now had the ability to sell a product. And so then I got to thinking, like, why would I even try to innovate in a world where no one's authentic when I can just go find all the best stuff and offer it up as the most famous artist? And, you know, I still look to contemporary, like, cultural trends and saleable aesthetics and trying to mash those things up in order to create art that will sell in today's marketplace to fund me creating more projects that make me more famous.
It's so smart. It's so smart. And like, you know, I do appreciate your openness and transparency in regards to like you're doing artwork that is interesting and cool, and that's going to make you more money and it's going to make you more famous.
Yeah, and if I don't get to become the most famous artist, at the end of the day, if the art world doesn't embrace me, I've made a living doing what I like doing and having fun with it.
Yeah.
And like, that's good enough for me.
What is your like work-life balance like?
It's pretty darn good. You know, like art is a thinking man's sport, and thinking requires a lot of just chilling.
Yeah.
And so, you know, like I'm not slaving away in the studio unless I'm getting, like right now I'm getting a show ready for San Francisco next week on March 16th at Miras Gallery in Soma. But like right now I've been in the studio. This is like my first break from the studio. I've been in like 14-hour days just trying to get this show ready for the last week or so. But that's because I procrastinated and didn't get it done before this. But most of the time it's like, I'm into working out now because I'm realizing that like the only way to become the most famous artist is to buy myself enough time to become the most famous artist. And in order to do that, I have to eat well, and I have to sleep well, and I have to take time to think, and I have to work out, which wasn't a focus of mine in the 20s. My 20s were about instant gratification and like getting drunk and having fun and making money and not thinking about the long term. And now I'm thinking about like what happens if I live till I'm 70.
Right. Well, in reality, anything could happen at any given moment, kind of like your experience on the Autobahn. Like, you know, there could be one, like a little shift in the universe where we all perish, or where everything changes in a moment.
Yeah. Like yesterday we were, I'm making this art that's, I'm making fuckable art.
Is that what this exhibit is?
This exhibit's a bunch of things. It's called Desirable Goods, and it
Okay.
starts with.
You gotta dish us the juice here.
It starts with. So first, I'll get to the thing. Okay, so I'm making this fuckable art, and it's basically like sex toys tied into art, so you could actually fuck it or be fucked by it.
Well, you're gonna get your dream accomplished of getting your dick sucked, like you said was your intention.
Well, yeah, I guess. I mean, there is a mouth one. So I'm making this fuckable art, and I'm in the wood shop yesterday, and we're using a Dremel to like, fix this wood to create these battens to like put the frame into the thing, and the Dremel like comes loose and fucking comes like within an inch of chopping off my hand. And like it gave me the willies. I was like, whoa, what am I even doing here? Like why am I like making this stuff where I could have just like chopped off my hand? Like that's crazy. Anyway, like so I'm making an exhibit, almost chopped off my hand, didn't, but I got fuckable art. Yeah, so I'm making these static paintings, which are quite literally just like black and white dots or black backgrounds with white dots. And the process of actually creating these paintings has been really laborious and tedious and like monotonous, where I'm just like putting dots on canvases. But in putting dots on canvases, I've got to think a lot about like what makes a painting desirable. And why are we as a culture obsessed with consumption? It's becoming very obvious that like being consumers to the degree that we all once were is totally unsustainable for this planet. I guess like in making these paintings and putting dots and being in the static, I've come to realize that the objects I'm creating are just more trash and waste. And then so like if you abstract away the object, you like get rid of the object altogether and you just have this idea, is it still art? Can you just share ideas and have those be art? I guess then you're a philosopher. So then what's the difference between a philosopher and artist? Is it simply a physical good and the idea that we as humans want to like make things that we think are valuable?
I think it's the same thing, that we feel the need to differentiate between a philosopher and an artist. Like, why do we have to do that?
See, like, I think you're an artist. Everyone I encounter is an artist to a certain degree as soon as you activate that thinking within them, that they can live their life more artfully.
No, I look at the word creativity, and we're all creating our lives, so we're all creative.
Yeah.
And we're all creating our masterpiece, our art, our lives.
So then why is it that, like, some people say, oh, I'm not creative? Is it because they were... Like, what is that?
To me, it's that they have a narrow belief of what creativity is, usually tied to graphic arts, because that's what we in third grade, we're in art class in school. And if you're not a good painter, you might consider yourself not to be creative for the rest of your life.
Yeah, which sucks. Like I was told I couldn't sing, and I never really got around to it. And if I maybe had I practiced my vocal cords a little bit more, I'd be like the Elton John of our generation, you know?
Are you not singing right now?
Yeah, my cadence and my tonalities are a little off, but like I'm definitely doing some freestyle rapping. One thing I've come to believe is that like one moment can change your life. Like all it takes is one big project to really nail it. Like there's bands out there that had one song. Yeah. And like should we knock them or should we celebrate them that they like were persistent enough that they got that one song out? And you know that got to be a big moment for them.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why to knock them. Where I get kind of struggle with that is it's tough to intentionally create even that one thing
without like consistent practice.
Well, yeah, consistent practice like increases the odds, right? That there will be one song that will penetrate and that will be a hit.
So my belief is that like in the same way that machine learning and AI are trying to solve like menial tasks for us, our human brains are computers capable of pattern recognition that allows us to actually skip a lot of steps in trying to figure shit out. Like if someone walks ahead of you and grabs a door and burns their hand, do you grab that door on the way in, or do you like wait for someone else to grab the door and then slide by them? Yeah. And is it being inauthentic to not go through that experience of grabbing the handle? You know, like do so like I'm hacking the art world right now. Like totally hacking it. Like breaking all the rules. I want to win all the prizes. I want to be known for being known. And most people don't like that because it's not authentic. And I'm doing that in air quotes.
Yeah.
But I think that's the most authentic way to live, which is like using the brain you have to skip all the steps that suck.
Indeed. I wanted to ask you this question because speaking of being real, there's usually like a deepest motive, like a root to the motive. So I'm wondering like what really is at the core of everything that drives you and motivates you? Is it importance? Is it being seen? Is it being heard?
Just enjoying. It's like just a simple feeling of gratitude for getting to enjoy the life I'm living. Because like I could either die and disappear forever, or go to heaven, or go to hell, or be reincarnated. But all that is for sure is that I've got this moment. And so just living it is what my goal is.
Yeah, I think my key takeaway here is that, you know, this world is evolving. It's evolving fast, and we can either let other people kind of direct where it's going and lead the way, or we can boldly choose who we want to be and be leaders in our own lives and leaders in this world. So thank you so much for that, Matty Mo. I appreciate this conversation. What do you have to say to your haters?
Thanks. Thank you.
Why is that?
In a world where attention is everything, even hate is energy. And if we're all like little molecules floating around, energy coming at you, whether good or bad, is there's something there. I don't know.
A few final questions as we wrap this up. What can we do to support you?
I don't become the most famous artist, or we don't become the most famous artist, given that it's a concept, unless we all participate. And so you can take a look at the work I've created. And if you have an idea for a project, think of me as a platform through which that idea could be expressed. If you have resources and want to help other projects come to life, feel free to reach out. We're always looking for that. And, you know, just keep being you.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Definitely check out, you know, all of his work on his website. He's got the bibliography there on themostfamousartist.com. And last question, what final words of wisdom, advice do you have for listeners of the show? And or is there anything else, like when you're driving over here, that you knew you wanted to share that you haven't had a chance to yet?
I think just general curiosity is a good thing.
General curiosity.
Yeah. Just stay curious. Be nice. Hug everyone. Be nice to everyone. Forgive easily. And let's forget this idea that the world is ending and that shit's bad, and just live in a place of abundance.
The one and only Matty Mo. This has been fun.
Thanks, Mark.
Let's go dip that painting.
Let's do it.